Welcome back to the Kevin O'Connor Show. We get a good one today. Tom Haberstroh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kev. How's it going?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a fun week of the NBA playoffs. We got a bunch of 1-1 series, especially with the top seeds, and then we have some 2-0s. We're going to start off with Wednesday night's games. Pistons tied it up in the series 1-1 against the Magic. Pistons won that one 98-83 behind what was a ferocious third quarter. They're tied 46-46 at halftime, and then by the 4-minute 34 mark in the middle of the third quarter, they're up 76-49. The Pistons, like, they started out that quarter, Tom. It wasn't defense that I thought sparked the run at first. It was offense. Tobias Harris hit a tough shot. Cade Cunningham hit a tough pull-up. And, of course, throughout, they did just stomp out everything that Orlando tried to do offensively and turned a lot of defense into offense on the other end of the floor for that just incredible run to get their first home win since the 2000s for the Pistons. What did you see from Detroit in that third quarter run? And is there anything that you saw during the run that makes you think that something clicked for the Pistons? They're back. They knocked the rust off, and this is the way it could be for the remainder of the series.
Yeah, they turned their defense way up in that third quarter, forced 6 turnovers on the Orlando side to just 5 field goals for Orlando. And so when you're able to get those turnovers like you see there and get out in the open court for Detroit, things are just so much easier than having to go in the half court against that size of Orlando. So anytime you can get those stops, create offense the other way, those half court offense points per possession numbers, they go out the window when you get those transition opportunities. So I think a lot of it is just having that defensive stand and being able to turn over that Orlando Magic offense, got everything they wanted in game one. I think that's the way they got to do it, is use that defense to turn it into offense, because they don't have great shooting out there. And so when things slow down in the half court, I don't think that Detroit has the upper hand. And it's almost like Orlando is like a worse version of the Pistons offense because they don't have real great shooting either. And so as much as they can get in that open court, get transition, use those young legs, they'll be better off for it, Kev.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, they have to turn defense into offense, have to get out in the open floor. And that said, though, I mean, Cade was magnificent in the game. I mean, he had a nasty in and out dribble in the second half of that game to create space against the Magic, and he looked a lot more comfortable against that Magic physicality, I thought, in his drives to the rim. They got Jalen Duren going a little bit more. He didn't have his best game. They still need to figure him out against that physical Orlando front line. Ultimately, I mean, I don't feel like a lot changes for me when it comes to the series after the conversation that I had with Tim on Monday. We talked about after the Magic went up 1-0 in the series. I do think Orlando still, aside from that 30-3 run, which matters, I'm not putting that aside, they still played pretty well in the first and second and fourth quarters of the game. So I still think we're not done here in the series. There's still a chance this goes beyond just a 5-game series. I don't think Detroit's going to win the next 3 of this series. I still think we're going to go a little bit further deeper into the series than I initially expected. I thought we were going to have a sweep here, but Orlando just looks more like the team people thought we were going to see early in the season. Franz Wagner healthy, Banchero playing a bit better, Suggs out there as well. It feels more like the Orlando team that we anticipated here, Tom. Is there any reason to believe otherwise, and that the Pistons are just going to stomp them out the rest of the way and that this is done in 5?
Well, with the way that Cade Cunningham looked in game 2, I mean, I'm just glad that I didn't have this vote after the fact, because I would have put Cade Cunningham ahead of Jalen Duren in the All NBA second and third teams. We had that discussion last week. And if I had seen these 2 games and gone Bill Simmons style and said, you know what, after what I've seen, I'm going to switch Cade Cunningham ahead of Jalen Duren on my ballot, that would have been in play because of how much better Cade Cunningham has looked. And Jalen Duren just looks overwhelmed out there. And the usage rate is way down against Wendell Carter Jr. in the front line of Orlando. And Cade Cunningham has shown up big time in this series. It's something that I'm keeping an eye on because, Duren didn't have a great postseason last year. And the regular season performance that we saw when he was holding everything together, both ends of the floor, when Cade Cunningham was out down the stretch in the season, he hasn't shown up. He just hasn't. They haven't gotten the ball to him. He hasn't been able to assert himself. And the physicality that we would assume that Durham would have the upper hand there, he simply hasn't been able to assert himself out there for the Pistons. And I do think that, man, Paolo Banchero, he made me eat my words at the end of that play-in tournament. Just the way that he had played and looked completely different player in that first game, and then at the end of the play-in tournament. But again, the pumpkins of that Orlando Magic offense showed up once again in that third quarter, and that was the difference in this series so far.
Yeah, they kind of got smacked around and just never found themselves again in that third quarter. And now we're tied up 1-1 there heading into game 3. Also last night, the Thunder went up 2-0 on the Phoenix Suns, 120-107. There's two key storylines from this series. A, Jalen Williams left in the second half with a hamstring injury. We'll talk about that in a second. And B, the fouling. I mean, we saw in the first half of that game, Chet Holmgren going for an offensive rebound, flops to the floor when getting boxed out by Osei Iguodala. And then in the second half of the game, Chet Holmgren has a 1-foot advantage over Colin Gillespie, draws a foul, little pump fake. It's just ugly, disgusting basketball. And then the one that went viral was the technical foul on Devin Booker, in which he kind of like the ball was lost out of bounds and he tried to save it and he flipped it back in and he got called for a tech. And Booker said after the game, and you can see Caruso do it, Caruso signals to the referee that it should be called for a technical. And Booker's like, in all my years in the league, I've never complained about the referees publicly. And he's like, but James did a horrible job tonight officiating this game. And Booker is 100% right. There's a couple of issues with it here. There's the cultural rot aspect of the game. When you see Chet Holmgren, not just SGA, but Chet and all these other guys flopping their way to whistles. That cannot be rewarded in playoff basketball. The NBA needs to fix that. But then there's just the pure lack of judgment by the officials in the moments where they call Booker for a tech. For what? Nobody could figure it out. I think only Alex Caruso had an idea of what the technical was for. He's the one who called for it, not the referee. The announcers didn't get it. Nobody understood it. We still don't have an answer exactly why it was called. It's just things like that, or in the Boston Sixers game where Jaylen Brown just posterized the Sixers defender and then he got called for a technical foul for flexing. Like, what are we doing here? This is supposed to be entertainment. There's just so many things that happen. And in particular, though, this OKC team, Tom, that doesn't need this. OKC should be a team where people tune in. They're like, oh my God, SGA, this amazing scorer, the best scorer of this generation. Oh my God, this incredible defense. Instead, today, what is it all about? And understandably so, it's this flopping and tricking the referees, and it was disgusting last night. I'm not someone who complains about this a lot when it comes to the Thunder as much as other people do, but I thought last night game 2 was as bad as it's been that I can remember on the OKC side of things, with the flopping and how it was rewarded by the officials. If you're a Suns fan, Tom, you feel like you have no chance when it's like that.
Yeah, well, Kev, did you see Devin Booker also alluded to the WWE if this continues in the press conference? Yeah. That is a bright line in the NBA, that if you're going to allege that the NBA is essentially like WWE, a fixed outcome based on the officiating, he's going to get fined for that. He said if this continues, then people will start thinking of the NBA as WWE. And so for Devin Booker to come out and say that, there had to have been a lot that would push him over the edge. And there was. You're talking about an absurd technical foul call from Alex Caruso. Oh, I'm sorry, JB DeRosa there in that moment where he's saving the ball from going out of bounds. And like, it's not like he threw the ball deliberately at Jalen Williams. And Jalen Williams in the moment wasn't like, yo, what was that all about? He didn't even react to the initial hit with the ball because Devin Booker was falling out of bounds. And so when you have Devin Booker after the game calling for it's bad for the integrity of the sport, and people are going to start viewing this as a WWE if they're not held responsible, I get it. And the second thing here, beyond the technical, is when he got called for the unnatural shooting motion when Alex Caruso was underneath him and Devin Booker went up for a shot, to have not just that called, but the Chet Holmgren play that you just put on, that we just saw the highlight of. The Chet Holmgren thing was way more egregious as an unnatural shooting play in which he didn't get called for the foul there. But later on, you have Devin Booker getting called for that and Alex Caruso just baiting him and throwing his head back to try to accentuate the contact that was not unnatural at all. And Doris Burke was 100% correct in calling that out and saying, how is that an unnatural shooting motion on Devin Booker when we see this time and time again from SGA, from Chet Holmgren, from a lot of players in the league? And for them to call Devin Booker out on that, it just seemed to me that something was up in this game. I don't know why the officials were so anti the Phoenix Suns in these moments. And like this play right here, it's not a natural shooting motion. He's turning to the side. He's not even looking at the basket. All of this.
He was looking at the referee at the sideline. He's not even looking at the basket.
And you're 100% correct here, Kev, in saying that this distracts from Oklahoma City's dominance in pure basketball, like the pure basketball side of this and the way that they play defense and score offensively. It shouldn't be bogged down in the officiating, but I'm with you. The officials lost control of this game, and it led to Devin Booker calling out the officials after the game. And Dylan Brooks after the game saying, I don't know why the officials are not held responsible, and the accountability should be held in press conference where reporters are allowed 100%. To ask referees for clarification, for reasons why they called it a certain way. And I wrote this in my the New Year's column that I do every year, the New Year's reconciliation or things that you need to do for the new Adam Silver should have these New Year's resolutions, not reconciliation. That's this is the Catholic in me. The New Year's resolution column that I wrote for Yahoo Sports, I said one of the things that we should implement is press conferences for referees. And I'm not saying that we should have them for every single game, but if the referees, if it becomes such a storyline, I think in the playoffs it makes sense for referees to be held accountable for their calls. And I also think for an opportunity to educate fans, whether it's the gather step, whether it's goaltending, whether it's fouls, unnatural shooting motions, blocks and charges. So many times in the NBA, we see fans, players just call out the officials and we don't get the official side of things. And the pool report, the pool report is not satisfactory when we don't have the referees answering back and forth amongst multiple reporters. I just think it's something that the NBA should be doing in the playoffs, if not in the regular season, at least in the playoffs, because Dylan Brooks, he's going to try to use the officials to even out this series in which they've been blasted in this series. I do think this is a lever that they're going to pull to get officials to side with them, whether it's deliberate or not, in games 3 and 4. But I do think he's right. The officials should be held accountable through press conferences, and a great opportunity for the officials to educate the fans.
Not press conferences. That's the wrong approach. We don't need more officials with the camera in their faces. I don't need Bill Kennedy making a show with a microphone in his face more than
they're not all Bill Kennedy though.
No,
they're not.
I know. I'm just saying as the example where it's glorified. People hate the officials. I'm talking people as in fans, and yet we talk sometimes. Oh, he's so funny, great personality. I don't want to know who these officials are. You're better off not knowing who they are. What we need is the NBA to hold them accountable, period, of end of story. The public aspect, the public needs to hold the NBA accountable, and then they hold the officials accountable. That's the way I look at it, Tom. I don't need to hear from these referees coming up with excuses. They're not going to play these games. They get fired. They're done. Goodbye. You need to push forward some rules here and some accountability in that, hey, we're not rewarding this flopping. This is a priority for us. And if you screw it up, you're not officiating these games. You're not on these national TV games. You're not officiating the NBA finals. And I know, of course, they do condense it down as the series goes on, but it needs to be even more strict, in my opinion. Ultimately, though, Tom, I think like some of these officials, their egos are out of this world, and it has always been a thing. Well, they love the cameras in their faces, and I just think for the NBA, you're going to give them more screen time. I don't want to hear from them. I don't want to see them. That's just my perspective. I know there's different ways of approaching the punishment aspect. I don't think public accountability is going to change anything. It's not like they haven't been criticized for decades. This is purely rot of a system that has allowed flopping to go on for so long, that has allowed some of this piss poor officiating to go on for so long. It is rot at the foundation that needs to be resolved more than anything else. And I think that's where, like, for years, anytime I talk to my friends who are more casual NBA fans, and like these are probably the people who like watch the show live or listen to this show on audio platforms, they're the more hardcore NBA fans. But when I talk to like my casual friends that tune in for the playoffs or watch an occasional national TV game, for as long as I can remember, when I asked them, why don't you watch basketball more regularly, the number one issue has always been the flopping and the whistles. Number two has always been stars don't play. I don't know what I'm going to get when I tune into games. And nobody has ever mentioned tanking. And the NBA right now, the primary focus for improving the game seems to be tanking. The biggest issue in the NBA is flopping and the whistles. This is the number one issue in the league when it comes to turning casuals into hardcore fans. Is games like last night with the Thunder and the Suns, where we should be talking about how brilliant the OKC Thunder are, and instead it is understandably so about this garbage that we saw in the game last night, both from the players taking advantage of this rotted foundation, but also just the piss poor performance from the officials themselves. And that, to me, comes from a lack of accountability from Adam Silver in the league office above anything else.
I totally hear you on that. And there is a lot of uncertainty among fans of how the referees are held accountable. And they do get rated and graded for every postseason series, or every postseason round. So you do see the referees get whittled down as we progress into the postseason. The NBA believes that is how they hold accountability. They get paid more the deeper they go into the postseason, right? So there is a financial incentive for these officials to get the calls right, to have good performance out on the floor, because if they don't, they're not going to get those extra game checks from progressing into the deeper rounds of the postseason. The finals referees, the ones that are selected for the finals, the small group of finals referees, are monetarily compensated more than the officials that only are in the first round. So there is an incentive and accountability in that sense. But what you hear from officials and coaches and players throughout the years is, how do they make those assignments? What is the actual grading system? Can we see that grading system? What are the methods of transparency to ensure that this isn't just handpicking finals referees or certain referees based on whether they're the favorites of the administration or whatnot? They want to see more transparency on how they hold these officials accountable. The second thing that I want to point out here is, Kevin, what happened to the flopping rule, the flopping violation? They can call that. They're able to call. There's a lever that the officials can do out on the floor to eradicate flopping. And we don't do it anymore. They don't call that flopping violation, even though we see it time and time again. So I do think the referees and the NBA have a huge win opportunity here, is to actually call flopping when they see it. And so I understand why Devin Booker is really upset here, because it's not just the technical for trying to save the ball from out of bounds. It's that he has to pay $2,000. It's a little known fact. If fans don't realize this, is every time a player is assessed a technical foul, it's a $2,000 fine. Players do not like that. They like their money. And I do think that fans should realize that it's not just a technical, but players, in effect, officials are taking $2,000 of money out of the players' pockets. And I know fans are not going to sympathize with guys making $50 million a year.
It's not a big deal.
But
it's a slap on the wrist.
But for officials, I can understand why they don't really want to call the technical or don't want to take money out of players' pockets, but there is a financial aspect to technicals, which is why it bothers players so much beyond just the fact that it changes the game.
Sure. I mean, look, like King Des said in the chat, King Des seems like a Thunder fan, and he said the refs are just trying to control the game. They gave a weak tech to both Dort and Brooks for nothing earlier in the game. Those are the things I have issues with. Let them play. Like when Jaylen Brown dunks on the Sixers and he flexes and the crowd goes crazy, what are we calling a technical for in these situations? Let them play. Let them be tough. Let them be aggressive. Let them push each other around a little bit. Let's let this competition of between grown men be a competition between grown men. Let's move on to the Lakers. They're up 2-0 on the Houston Rockets despite no Luka Doncic, despite no Austin Reeves. All indications are that Luka is not close right now. Austin Reeves seems even closer than Luka to returning right now. My number one thought from these first two games in the series, Tom, boy, Ime Udoka is being out-coached by JJ Redick. He in game two, KD comes back. He guards LeBron James. Does not look anywhere near ready to move with LeBron James. So many easy dunks and lobs by LeBron, by the Lakers, based off of LeBron's passes. Then he decides to send two at LeBron, even though LeBron couldn't score in the game. That opened up even more open opportunities for the Lakers. And then Ime's got no idea what he's doing on offense. Reed Shepherd plays 36 minutes in game one, 11 minutes in game two, and Kevin Durant has the ball in his hands a lot in this game. 9 turnovers for Kevin Durant in game two, and at least 7 of those were definitely his fault. Sloppy handles, got stripped by Marcus Smart, really just inaccurate passes. A few of them, you watch the plays, it's like, oh, he should have caught that. It's like, no. Like, these are inaccurate passes. This is the quarterback throwing behind the receiver and the receiver getting smacked over the middle. That's what this was with Kevin Durant, with some of these sloppy decisions. And then it took Ime way too long, I thought, considering the difficulties Durant was having, to have somebody else initiate the offense. Obviously, Reed Shepherd was plastered to the bench. I gave the ball to Amen Thompson. Took too long to get there. I just feel like JJ has coached circles around Ime Udoka in this series, and the Lakers have executed at a simply higher level as well. But I just, look, I've been critical of Ime, Tom. I mean, the Rockets ended the season with some wins. Those seem very fake when you're down 2-0 against the Lakers without Luka and Austin Reeves. Just hard to fathom, but it's really not that hard to fathom when you consider Ime Udoka. It's just not that good of a coach, and he has no idea how to coach offense.
How is it possible that Ime Udoka does not have a solve for KD getting doubled? It looks like it's the first time that's happened. And like Reed Shepherd is an antidote to those double teams because he's an excellent 3-point shooter and a guy who can play make for others. And he was glued to the bench. Free Reed. Okay. We need more Reed Shepherd, not less, when they can't score above 100 points. This is an absolutely an opportunity for them.
Ime is at fault there, but also KD. There was the play in the first half where Reed Shepherd was kind of like a 3-on-2 on the break, and Reed Shepherd took a 3 instead of dribbling into the paint to try to draw a foul or get a layup at the rim, and KD kind of snapped at him after he took and missed the 3-pointer. So it's like, also KD, hey, you get a guy who makes 45% of his threes and you need his spacing. Maybe support that guy and be more of a leader. So I think on KD too with the Reed Shepherd stuff.
Yeah, it's clear that these guys don't play for each other. I don't think they like each other in the sense of, like, when you look at what happened with Alperen Şengün and KD at the All-Star break, and the burner accounts, where it just seems like everything around this team feels just like it stinks. It stinks. And Ime Udoka, against this shorthanded Lakers team, they should be up 2-0 in this series. They absolutely should be. LeBron James has gone old school, just backing Amen Thompson down in the paint, Tari Eason, and just controlling everything offensively. And they haven't figured out a counter. They can't double. They're not rotating. This is LeBron James right now, and we did the big number on this yesterday. LeBron has 16 post-ups in this series so far, which is more than any other team in the NBA. You combine Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün. He has more post-ups than any of those guys combined. He has more post-ups than 4 NBA teams combined in this postseason. And it's like Ime has no counter. He's got no way to respond to an old school basketball trick that LeBron's like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to back down this guy and control the defense in ways that they don't know how to respond. And yet on the other side, KD is getting doubled every time down the floor, and it looks like it's the first time he's played basketball. And that's the difference here, is that LeBron at this age has been able to control everything like he is a master chess player. And everything that I see on the other side is that the Houston Rockets are playing checkers. They have no idea how to thwart the Lakers' defense or their attacks. And man, JJ Redick, as you said, has been running circles around Ime Udoka. And it just seems like this Houston Rockets team, they're not playing for each other. It seems there's a disconnect with the coach and the players. And if you look at the way that KD has played against those double teams, it is very clear who has the upper hand in this series, and it's not Ime Udoka.
Tom, you saying the chess checkers thing made me just think about, isn't that the story of LeBron and Durant and their career? I mean, LeBron is the orchestrator, one of the highest IQ players in the history of the sport. He has dragged some pretty okay rosters deep into the playoffs. Meanwhile, Kevin Durant, he's more of the checkers. He's not the creator. He's not the playmaker. He is the guy who only won when he was on the Golden State Warriors at the highest of levels and has been unable to lead any team to success on his own. It is really the story of those two in their entire careers, and still is to this day, even in this series where LeBron James is up 2-0 in the series, even though he's without Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, because he's winning with his mind. Whereas Kevin Durant has 9 turnovers. 9 turnovers.
He signed up for this.
He did. He wanted
That's the other thing.
And
he wanted this situation. And yes, he didn't sign up for Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams going down. But we can also agree that he signed up for a team that has Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün and Reed Shepherd on it. And it looks like he already wants to bail. Like, this is a situation that he is not thriving in. And it looks like, just by us and the national conversation, for sure we're pinning this on Ime Udoka, the coach that he wanted to play for, and Kevin Durant. So this is another situation that it seems like he wants to hit the erase button real fast.
Real quick, Tom, I just got to point out the 3-man lineup of Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün, and Reed Shepherd played 4 minutes in game 2. They won those minutes 14-4. So, hey, Ime Udoka, if you're looking for something to do in game 3, maybe play a little bit more of Reed Shepherd in the game with Alperen Şengün and Kevin Durant. And ultimately, Tom, I think for Houston, there are adjustments to be made. And I do think this series is not over yet. Can you really expect Luke Kennard to go for 27 like he did in game 1 or 23 in game 2? Maybe it keeps happening. Maybe this is the new Luke Kennard and JJ Redick has unlocked him. Can you really expect Marcus Smart to go off for 25 like he did in game 2? Maybe not. Maybe he will. Marcus Smart does have these hot stretches. It certainly could be possible. We're about to see 2 weeks straight of Marcus Smart making 50% of his threes. It's happened before. But the fact is that I don't think this series is quite over. I still think Houston has a chance here, even though everything you said is true. They seem like a team not playing for themselves. When you juxtapose that against the Lakers, a team that certainly does seem like they're playing together, the way they move without the ball, the motion of their offense, the way they're playing LeBron James as kind of the focal point, that playmaking hub. It is beautiful basketball. And it's so cool to see the Lakers playing this way when it's dramatically different than Luka ball, where Luka has the ball in his hands all the time, and it works. I'm not downplaying that, but it's just cool to see these guys go up 2-0 in the series playing in the opposite style, with LeBron James as the centerpiece of that, with all these different guys getting touches, the ball getting sprayed around. And ultimately, I really do think that is a big-time credit to JJ Redick for getting these guys to play that way, getting these guys to accept those roles, and then getting them to play defense the way they are. It's been very impressive to see the Lakers go up 2-0 on the Rockets, considering the circumstances that they're facing. And I think that's a lot different than the Cavaliers being up 2-0 on the Raptors, which is kind of a no surprise type of series between Cleveland and Toronto right now. Are there any signs that the Raptors can make a series out of this, Tom?
I don't think so. But Cleveland, as much as I want to say, as much as I want to say that Cleveland has been awesome, I'm just reminded that last year they blew out the Miami Heat in such a way that it was like one of the most lopsided first round series we've ever seen. And so I put forth these numbers with that caveat, knowing that last year was very much the same against the Heat. The starting five for the Cleveland Cavaliers with Donovan Mitchell, with James Harden, 49-31 plus 18 against the Toronto Raptors in this series. Their offensive rating is 136 against the Raptors, one of the best defenses in the regular season, and they've torched them, absolutely torched them. And so when you look at why did they get James Harden and why did they decide Darius Garland wasn't going to be a good fit for them in the postseason? So far, so good on that. But I would say Toronto got to figure out a way to get more offense and more ability to get something out of Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and their star players. Because at this point, it just seems like there's just too much firepower on the Cavs side. They look great, but they also look great in the first round last year too, Kev.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it's going to be a tougher road ahead for Cleveland. They definitely got the easiest matchup, I'd say, of the first round of the Eastern Conference. And I think for the Toronto side of things, this game was played on April 20th, 4/20. Brandon Ingram certainly looked like he was celebrating in that game. I mean, he was 3 for 15 in game 2 with 5 turnovers. And like some of the turnovers he had, Ingram, like he kicked the ball off his own feet early in the game, and the shots he was taking midair, some of the passes where it's like, how did you not see that guy? Like, there's 2 defenders there. What are you doing? And I'm without words with what Ingram did. Like, a part of me give credit to like Merrill and Wade for defending him really tough on some possessions, but boy, some of the thing was just self-imposed mistakes. Like I said, he looked like he was celebrating something else.
I think he's one of those guys that I wonder if he's a postseason player or just a regular season player. And this series has not confirmed for me that he's the opposite. Like I want to say that Brandon Ingram is a guy that, because he's so tall and can play above the defense, and he's got that mid-range game going, that he's a guy that can get you buckets when you need it. But that's never been the case with Brandon Ingram. He doesn't have a deep postseason profile, but I worry that the inefficiency and the lack of playmaking from Brandon Ingram is going to plague him for the rest of his career in the playoffs. This guy, it's a great story that he's come back from the DVT and the fact that he came back from the ankle injury, quote unquote, last year, and he had a great regular season, all-star campaign. But yeah, game 2 was not the high point of his career, and I'll just say that he's got to show me a lot more here. I'm not saying, I'm not alleging.
Maybe it was the high point of his career. Very possible with the way in which he performed in that one. So we got 1-1 series in the 2 7s and the 3 6s on both sides, the East and the West. Let's start out in the Western Conference here, Tom. The Blazers, they tie it up 1-1. Victor Wembanyama suffers a concussion in the game, and obviously this was horrible. I mean, his face just smacked the ground so hard after Drew Holiday pulled the chair out from under him, and it was really a smart defensive play by Drew Holiday. This happened in game 1 as well, where Wemby kind of fouled awkwardly after Drew Holiday pulled the chair out. So clearly this was something that the Blazers have scouted, that Wemby can get out of control. Obviously never could have expected it to turn into a concussion, but I'll tell you what, Tom, we'll see when Wemby comes back. He was at the Keldon Johnson 6th Man of the Year ceremony on Wednesday, and I guess he was shot around a little bit. We'll see if he actually plays game 3, but his absence was felt in that game too. The Spurs shot only 29% from three. They made 7 of 24 of their shots from three. And the lack of success is notable there, but so is the lack of volume, because 24 of their 86 shots were taken from three-point range. So that means 28% of their total shots came from three. That's the lowest of the season since opening night. 21% of their shots came from mid-range. That's the most of this season since that opener as well. So the Blazers defense has turned the Spurs into something that they don't want to be with their half-court offense, and that is most apparent when you look at Castle, Harper, and Fox. With Wemby on the floor, Castle, Harper, and Fox have taken 39% of their shots at the rim, only 6% of their shots from mid-range. Castle, Harper, and Fox without Wemby have taken 21% of their shots at the rim to 26% of their shots from mid-range. So their shot diet has dramatically changed, as it did all season long, with Wemby off the floor. And the Blazers, credit to them with their defense, turning this into a Spurs offense that isn't playing anything like the basketball, playing anything like the basketball that they want to play. And I think Portland deserves a lot of credit there, but also, hey, this is the way it's been all year for the Spurs when it comes to Castle, Harper, and Fox with their shot diet without Wemby out there.
Yeah, and when you talk about what the Blazers like to do is they like to crash the boards, get second chance opportunities, and finish with Donovan Clingan, Rob Williams III. And these guys they clean the glass as good as anybody in the league. And without Victor Wembanyama out there, they're having a tough time keeping them off the boards. And that's one thing that the Blazers have done all season. We've been harping on it during the broadcast, is that Tiago Splitter very much believes in crashing the boards and making sure that Donovan Clingan, with his size advantage on most teams, he can be able to get those second chance opportunities, kick out for threes, or finish on putbacks. And Rob Williams is so underrated, and his health is on his side this season, and it's been great to see. I thought he deserved the Defensive Player of the Year award over Marcus Smart a few years ago with the Boston Celtics that year. And I think for people who did not realize that Rob is on this team and are just tuning in now, you see his presence on the floor on both ends. He's so much better than he was a couple years ago. It's just he's not been able to play 30 minutes a night because of his injuries. But when he's out there, man, it is so awesome to watch. And now he has a three-point shot where the top 9 guys for the Blazers all have made a three in this series, and that's by design. They want to play 5 out, create more driving lanes for Scoot Henderson, for Drew Holiday, for Denny Avdia, and it's worked to perfection in the first 2 games, splitting the series in San Antonio. And this is a different story than we saw in the regular season, where in 3 games against the Spurs, the Blazers lost the season series 2-1, and none of those games Wemby played. And so this is a new Blazers story here, that they'd been able to capitalize on Wemby's absence. And Scoot Henderson, man, what a story. Him coming out in his playoff debut, scoring 49 points, which is, I think, the 3rd most in the Blazers history for their first 2 games in their playoff career. I mean, the guy, he leads all players this postseason in transition points. I should say in this playoffs, in the 2 games that he's played, he leads all players in points off of transition. And this is notable because when the Blazers get stops, they're a totally different team. Get out in transition, Scoot Henderson pulling up in the mid-range. Even when he's got Victor Wembanyama lurking behind him, he's been able to finish, get to the free throw line. And a lot of these times, it is in the open court and not against a set defense. And that's when Scoot is at its best. There was one play in game 1 where he poked the ball away from Victor Wembanyama, and then Stephon Castle was waiting for him in a foot race to the rim on the other side, and Scoot blasted him, got way past him in the foot race. And that's just Scoot Henderson's game. When he's able to get downhill, use his speed and athleticism to beat you down the floor, he is so special. And in this game, in this series, The mid-range game is going. The three-point shot is going. I can't say enough good things about Scoot Henderson. In the last 20 games of the regular season, he shot 41% from downtown, and it's continued here in the postseason where you're seeing him be a completely different player than he was in his first 2 years. And it's great to see after a torn hamstring, he's rewriting the Scoot Henderson story in the playoffs in his playoff debut. This is it's great to see. I mean, I of course am biased because I'm on the broadcast and I've seen the lows from Scoot Henderson in the first couple of years and the injuries. It is great to see. If you're an NBA fan, this guy loves hooping. He loves playing for his teammates, and you can see it. The spirit that he plays with is awesome.
He works so hard. I interviewed him pre-draft. I first interviewed him the first time when he was with the G League Ignite during the week he faced Victor Wembanyama. This was 3.5 years ago at this point. He is just such a good kid, and he wants to be such a good player. And Scoot, after the really rough start, both with his own performance, I think with Scoot, when you watch those highlights of him in game 2 dropping 31 points, what my main takeaway with Scoot is, well, it's two things. It's the pace in which he's playing with. I thought early in his career, he got by with his elite athleticism at the high school level, and then that turned into good athleticism at the NBA level, and he wasn't quite able to adjust, getting past guys, exploding at the rim. But he is playing now with a pace and a maturity that apparent out there on the floor when you watch him, compared to even when things were good with the G League, with the Ignite, and then definitely when things were rough early in his career with the Blazers. But at this point, he's playing a mature game, and the shot is just much better. We've seen the flashes of this, even going back to last year, Tom. This with Scoot, he improved a little bit as a shooter, and this year started out rough after coming back from the hamstring injury, but he looks like a guy who finally has translated his 80+% touch from the free throw line, the touch we've long seen from him in the paint, to finally figuring out from mid-range and from three-point range. And this is why in the NBA draft, historically, free throw percentage has always been a stronger indication of future three-point success than three-point percentage is at the college or G League level. And with Scoot Henderson, I think he is currently serving as a pretty good example of that. I'm not sure he's going to score, 25 plus points every game in this series, Tom. But it feels like this is just more signs that Scoot Henderson is an NBA player. He is a real legitimate NBA player, and that we are still at the beginning here. And this kid is only going to continue getting better for the Blazers in the many, many years to come. And also, hey, next year he gets to play with Damian Lillard, or maybe how about next week, Tom? We saw the Blazers posted a video of Damian Lillard shooting around. Is there any chance of that? Anything you can share? What was that? Why'd the Blazers post that out of the blue? Damian Lillard in the gym. What can you share, Tom? This is off the record, by the way. Nobody's watching. It's just you and me, Tom.
Nobody's watching.
Just kidding.
No, I tweeted that out too, and my response was just the ball rotation is mesmerizing. That's all I can say. I have no inside knowledge of whether Damian Lillard's coming back or not. I don't know anything, but I will say I love watching that guy shoot. I could watch it for hours. And earlier this season, he posted, I think he shot like 90% on 1,000 3-pointers in the gym. And it's just, or something crazy like that. I think it was just a reminder to folks how amazing he's just an artist when it comes to 3-point shooting. And again, this is what I'm talking about. He has this weird thing where he shoots where his fingertips are not touching the ball, and there's a gap between his fingertips and the ball when he's released, or like right before his release, the ball kind of like rocks in his palm in ways that is kind of unorthodox, but everything about it, it just is, I'll just say it, it's basketball porn. Watching Damian Lillard shoot the basketball. It's so good. It's so good. But whether he plays or not, I've got no insight. And I'll just say that Scoot Henderson, the way that he's playing, I don't think they need Damian Lillard back in this series. Of course, he's Damian Lillard, a Hall of Famer, NBA 75 guy. But with the way that they've been performing so far in this series, it's been really cool to watch Scoot Henderson. I do want to, if I can, I want to talk about this Wemby thing because I have a story coming
course.
out later today on Yahoo Sports talking to Chris Nowinski, who's the CEO and founder of the Concussion and CTE Foundation. And I asked him about the Wemby injury. And he said one thing that caught my eye about this, or as I'm interviewing him, he said the worry also is not just that he suffers another concussion if he comes back too early. And 2 concussions in the same week is dramatically worse if you have a second concussion in a week, which is what it would be if he returned Friday, if he returns in time for that game on Friday, which is outside of the NBA's protocols of a 48-hour gap between the injury and when he can play in full participation with a battery of tests, cognitive tests and neurological tests to see if he's all the way there, right? But one thing that I think people need to realize is we see with concussions, the return to play in the next 90 days. There's been a published study, an academic paper that showed in the NBA 90 days after that concussion, even after you've returned and been cleared to play, you see a statistically significant uptick in lower extremity musculoskeletal injuries. So meaning when you are coming back from a concussion, there is a higher increased risk of an ankle turn or a calf strain or a knee injury. These sort of things are popping up more historically for players who are coming back after a concussion compared to when they do not have a concussion. And so it's not just the real brain injury, re-injury concern for Wemby if he does have another concussion here upon his return or another hit to the head. It's also for a guy who missed a quarter of the season with calf, ankle, and knee issues. You do wonder whether the Spurs are also going to consider this in their return to play protocol. Is for a guy that's 7'4" and moves like a guard, having him not have his full mental faculties can also lead to lower leg injuries where he might not have the spatial awareness of having a guy that did not suffer a concussion. And I hope, and I know that the Spurs are going to make sure that he passed this test in order to have his return to play here. But I do think that people need to understand that there's multiple things that you look at when it comes to a brain injury like this and a concussion that Chris Nowinski in the article, he mentions this, and it's backed by academic studies, that for NBA players, it's the lower leg injuries that maybe they don't see someone underneath them going up for a layup, or they do a spin move and they go into a player and that contact might not have been there if he was not concussed earlier in the season. It's things like that, Kev, that I just want people to be aware of as we approach Friday's game, that if the Spurs hold him out in that game, there's lots of things that they have to check and lots of things that they're considering from a medical standpoint, a health and safety standpoint. And it's not just about the brain injury or re-injury. It's also about the rest of his body that they're trying to protect.
That's an incredibly smart point. I think when people think about concussions and the return to play, it's often about just simply, getting another concussion, not about how coming back from that concussion affects how quickly you're able to just read the floor, your spatial awareness, and what that can lead to with further potential injuries. And I think for the Spurs, that does need to be something on their mind with him, right? I mean, ultimately with the Spurs, I personally feel the Spurs need Wemby to win this series. I think the Blazers have such a great defense, number 3 in defensive rating since the All-Star break. Their offense, Danny did not have a great game too, despite no Wemby. Danny could come out and be ferocious, 45 plus points in game 3. He's going to get to the rim. The Blazers are now going to have a new game plan against the Wemby-less Spurs, assuming Wemby doesn't play Friday. I think the Blazers win this series if Wemby doesn't play. However, it does seem like where things are pointing towards Wemby at some point returning. I cannot imagine that he's gonna lay down and let the Spurs doctors be super conservative here. They might have the final say, of course, but Wemby's gonna push back a lot and say, I'm fine, I'm good, and all that. The Spurs need to be careful, but I also think the Spurs need him to win the series. Is my feeling with the Portland Trail Blazers, with the way in which they can perform, the way they can exploit the Spurs. Everything I talked about earlier with the lack of three-point shooting success, the lack of getting to the basket for Castle, Harper, and Fox, the uptick in mid-range shot attempts. It's everything that comes from Wemby. This is in part why I voted him MVP. It's in part why I think they lost game 2. It's why I'm worried about them moving forward in the series with Wemby. But this is a very tough situation here, Tom, for the Spurs. They got to be careful here. If I'm the Spurs, I go play game 3 without Wemby. If I win that, I play game 4 without Wemby. If I'm down 2-1, I would think about playing Wemby Sunday, assuming everything is okay for game 4, because I can't risk going down 3-1. I couldn't risk it, assuming he's at least good enough to play.
A little backstory here on the history of concussions in the NBA playoffs is, remember in 2015, Kevin Love, he was held out of game 3 in the NBA finals against the Warriors after he took, I think it was an elbow to the back of the head from Harrison Barnes. And Richard Jefferson and Kevin Love on ESPN, they had this back and forth a couple years ago when Tua, for the Miami Dolphins quarterback, there was a lot of discussion about concussions in the NFL. And they had Kevin Love on to talk about what happened in game 3 when David Griffin, then the president of basketball operations for the Cavs en route to that championship, apparently in the back room, Kevin Love was so mad that David Griffin relayed the news that they're holding him out for game 3 that he was screaming, sprinting down the tunnel and yelling at Griff because he was so mad that they were going to hold him out of game 3. And he said in this interview on ESPN, he said, I wasn't thinking beyond 5 inches from my face. I didn't realize, the long-term effects about what they were trying to do to protect me. Right. And in that moment, he was heated. He's like, the Cavs haven't won a championship in 52 years. It's a pivotal game 3. We're down 0-2. Absolutely, I'm playing in game 3. And the team stepped up and said, hey, we got to have your best interests here long-term for a 5-time All-Star like Kevin Love. Do you remember what happened in game 7? Kevin Love had one of the great iconic defensive stands that we have seen, one of the great defensive stops on Stephen Curry later in that series. And now Kevin Love understands, like, they were absolutely right. I'm glad they were holding me out in game 3, in which the Cavs did win without him. And I think the Spurs, this isn't just any other player. This is Victor Wembanyama. And so he's going to try to come back. We know he's going to try to come back, but this is why they have cognitive tests and medical professionals in line to step in front of the player and say, hey, look, it's best for you and best for the team and best for your long-term health that we hold you out of this game. And I don't know anything about the San Antonio Spurs, what's going on right now, but Shams Charania did report that late Wednesday night, Victor Wembanyama did perform cardio exercises, and he wants to travel, and he's hopeful that he's going to travel to Portland for game 3. But there are examples of star players being held out for concussions against their will. And it was best for the player. And now Kevin Love is saying, absolutely, Griff and the Cavaliers did what's best for us. And I get it. It's easier to say that after they won the championship, but I think we can all agree the Spurs are going to have Wemby's best interests here, long-term health, forget basketball, long-term health in mind as they make this decision going forward. And it's not just going to be a basketball decision.
The Wolves and Nuggets are also tied up 1-1. Let's talk about that series, because my main thought with this one right here is we've seen Rudy Gobert cause some issues for Jokic, but also Jokic's 3-ball is gone right now. We're seeing the Wolves play a very deep drop against him, preventing penetration. This happened also in game 1, letting Jokic take open threes. He's 3 of 14 from 3 in the series. He had 2 air balls in game 2. And going back to when he returned from his injury in late January, he's shooting only 31% from 3 on 155 attempts. For context, he was at 44% prior in the year, 42% last year. And I think this is affecting him. The lack of a shot is leading to some sloppy decisions, in addition to the fact that he knows Gobert is defending him really well inside, and he's passing out of situations, making uncharacteristic sloppy plays. There was one 3-pointer he took in game 2 where you can see him, I think it was the end of the second quarter, end of the half, and like he took the 3, missed it, and he just kind of sulked just looked disappointed in himself. And Jokic is just not playing like Jokic. And I come away from these first two games, it's 1-1. Like, we'll see how this continues. I think despite Gobert's success in the paint defending Jokic so far, if his three's not falling, and there's not a lot of evidence that it's going to start falling, considering it's been since January that it hasn't, I'd like to see them post up Jokic a little bit more. During the season, we saw Jokic log 9.8 post ups per 100 plays. That's down to 6.4 in games 1 and 2. And despite Gobert's success, whether it's Gobert or you can get him on a switch against McDaniels or Naz Reid or whoever it is, getting Jokic inside, to me, might have to be something we see happen with the way the Wolves are defending him when he pops for threes, and then also when he rolls and he just seems to be looking for some passes because he's a little bit hesitant with Gobert out there lurking.
I'm not buying it. I think they're going to blow him out in game 3. I think Jokic's shot, he's too good, man. I think he's too good. And maybe his back or his knee or whatever it is bothering him, and we don't know perfect information about his health right now. But I just feel like the Denver Nuggets are unsustainably shooting poorly right now. You look at Jokic and you cited his numbers about how good he is historically and what he's been in this series. The air balls are concerning because no one has better touch than that guy. And the fact that he's missing so poorly is maybe an indication that something else is going on. But I'll throw these numbers at you too, is that Jokic, while he isn't leading the league in assists in this postseason like he did in the regular season, his potential assists are way up there. Like, he is creating shots for teammates in ways that I would excuse his poor shot making if his teammates were hitting shots. Well, they're not. Off of Jokic's passes in this postseason so far in the 2 games, they're shooting 10 of 30 from downtown, 33% from downtown off of Jokic passes. That was 40% in the regular season. In this series, Jamal Murray, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Aaron Gordon are shooting 5 of 19 on threes set up by Jokic. They're way better than that. And we shouldn't just put too much in a 2-game sample. And especially when you look at the fact that on 2-pointers set up by Nikola Jokic, this team is shooting 37% from the floor off of Jokic passes in the regular season. That was 52%. So the threes are going from 40 to 33%, and the twos are going from 52% to 37% off of Jokic passes. So as much as I want to say that Rudy Gobert is in his head or forcing him to kind of play differently, and maybe they need to get more out of Jokic, I also think a lot of those things would be covered up if the teammates started hitting their shots. And Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., these are guys that if they're Cam Johnson, if they're playing up to their abilities, I'm not really worried about Jokic airballing a couple threes.
Look, the fact is, some of those potential assists, Jokic should be taking the shot. I mean, he had that weird little wraparound pass when he had the floater in the paint. He had the kick out to Christian Brown late in the game where Brown drove and missed the free throws. Jokic has to take some of these shots too, instead of kicking out to these guys that the Wolves are happy he's kicking it out to. And even with Cam Johnson, I've talked about him a handful of times on the podcast this year, including when he had his horrific 0-for-6 game in early March, I think it was, against the Wolves. And he's like, I got to fix myself. I got to get myself out of this. And he did. He went from shooting like crap off of Jokic passes to shooting the hell out of it the remainder of the season. But it's very possible that Cam Johnson just isn't a playoff player. He talked about the mental aspect. It's very possible that he's in his own head as well. The fact he's 3 for 13 from 3 so far in the series. We've seen him talk about this openly before. So I've got my concerns there. I've got my concerns about the fact there's no Peyton Watson for Denver. He is so important to what they do defensively as a help side defender, as an on-ball guy, and as a shooter too. He's become such a knockdown guy, and he can do a little bit off the dribble as well. It feels like Denver's really missing Peyton Watson. And then also, I mean, look, Jaden McDaniels, the bad defenders quote, he's not wrong in some regards. It's a little bit of a hot take, a little bit of extreme to say every defender's bad. But Jokic had some really bad possessions in the second half of that game against Minnesota where it's just Olay defense. Here you go. Go to the basket. You're free to have a layup. Jokic needs to be better defensively, and this is in part why I don't think he should have been in the MVP this year, and he won't be the MVP this year. He was not the same defensively this season, defending pick and rolls, defending in space as he was the last handful of years or in his MVP seasons. And this is apparent, I'd say, through 2 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves with the way in which he's impacting guys coming at him inside the paint. And it's not all his fault. Like, point of attack defense needs to be better as well. But I do wonder after that McDaniel's quote, if they're all bad defenders, and he lists them by first name and last name: Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Hardaway, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon. Is just hilarious. It's just deadpan. He was so serious the whole time. I wonder if that is going to be some extra motivation for Denver in game 3 tonight with this matchup on the road against Minnesota, and you see them put out their best defensive effort, or is it going to be more Minnesota getting what they want?
I love the playoffs, man. I love the playoffs.
It's so good. Isn't it the best? Isn't this so good?
It's so great, man. Like, even the Dylan Brooks and the Devin Booker comments after the game, like, it's so much theater and drama, and I love the comments here from Jaden McDaniels. It adds so much spice here, and I want to see what Nikola Jokic, angry, calling him out for his defense, looks like. Like, is it just going to be like that dunk that he had on Rudy Gobert late in the game? Awesome. Like, I want to see what that looks like defensively. Like, are we going to get like Dikembe Mutombo, Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic out there? I'd love to see that.
Impossible. It's not possible. I mean, I love Jokic, but that's not possible. A couple other things from this game. Anthony Edwards, I thought, was much better in game 2. Jason Timpf on my podcast on Monday ripped him apart with his off-ball defense. I thought he was way better off-ball in this game. He had a couple of blocks in the paint, one as a help defender. Then he had a chase down block on the break. Just great effort, I thought, from Ant. Great attentiveness off ball. Also had 9 rebounds as well. I don't think that should go overlooked. And Julius Randle, not good in game 1, and then he was just a bulldozer in game 2, gutting through everybody in the paint. If you get that version of Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards locked in, playing really hard on defense, look, man, these Denver-Minnesota series, they have been tremendous in the past. And I hope it's shaping out to be that, Tom, even though you do feel like Denver's going to smoke them in game 3. I don't see it happening. I think this series is going to go deep. It's going to go 7. It wouldn't shock me if we see Minnesota go up 2-1 tonight at home against the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, Denver can't feel great about splitting the first 2 games here. And no. I think you're pointing out something that when Jaden McDaniels calls out them for having all these bad defenders, he put Aaron Gordon in there. And I think Aaron Gordon playing on one leg, or not healthy Aaron Gordon, is not the same thing as fully healthy Aaron Gordon. And without Peyton Watson, it looks a lot more apparent that Aaron Gordon is such, like, healthy Aaron Gordon playing at a high level is such a swing factor in this series. And he's been coming up empty a lot of the time. And I feel like he will take it an umbrage when he's included in that, but his body might not be right. And they need Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon, 2 of those guys, in order to be, at the top of their game and win a championship this season. Right now they have half of one of those guys. And so this is, I think the shot making and the unsustainable shooting from not just Jokic, but his counterparts, I think that reverses in game 3. But if they don't get this game 3, this could get ugly real fast for the Denver Nuggets. And I know the championship core that they have there, it's hard to bet against them. But Minnesota, they've also been to the Western Conference Finals routinely here. And don't underestimate the heart of a Western Conference semifinal champion and Anthony Edwards. So watch out for that dude in game 3.
Real quick thought here. I kind of, glossed past it earlier in the conversation when we talked about the Thunder and Suns. Jalen Williams exited the game tonight or last night with a hamstring injury. And I think if you're looking at the rest of the Western Conference right now, you have the Lakers up 2-0. Wolves, Nuggets, one of those teams could potentially not face OKC until the Western Conference Finals. It's hard to go back to back. And OKC without Jalen Williams, who was tremendous in game one and in game two, his 3-point shot looks back. That's one of the things I talked about in my X Factors article and video, and talked about it on the podcast here. I was worried about J-Dub with his 3-pointer. He just wasn't shooting as many of them as he was last year, and he wasn't making as many of them either. He looked back, and then he suffers a hamstring issue again. And that, to me, is a scary sign for the Thunder here. And I think it opens the door a little bit more for Denver or Minnesota or even the Lakers with Luka and Austin Reeves to get past them and represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. So that's just like, we'll see with that. But hamstring injuries are tough, Tom. They're really tough. And that's a scary thing that happened this week for the Thunder.
100%. And aggravating a hamstring injury, an existing issue, is a multiplier effect of concern. That if it's just one time this season that he was dealing with a bum hamstring, okay, that's not an issue. But with all that scar tissue built into there, and then it still is able to bark again here in the postseason, that's a huge level of concern for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And a big reason why I picked the Spurs to win it all this postseason is because of the injury variance that we see in today's NBA. A big reason why we see 7 different title winners in the last 7 years is because a lot of these defending champs are suffering injuries, or they're dealing with a lot more of the wear and tear of going deep into the postseason that other teams simply do not have. And so you're seeing Jalen Williams calling out of the game, getting this foul call so he can exit the game. Huge level of concern. And it's also a big reason why I feel so bad for Spurs fans right now and Victor Wembanyama, is because this could easily be a Western Conference team's year because of the injuries and all. The Thunder had a top 3 number of player games lost due to injury in the NBA this season. Despite all those injuries, they were able to get to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. But we've seen it time and time again that these miles add up, and you're seeing with Jalen Williams that the aggravation of this hamstring injury means that they're going to be one less horse, as JJ Redick called it with Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, one less horse for them to ride going forward for the Thunder. So the door is definitely cracked up open a lot more for these other Western Conference teams. And I'm glad you brought it back, because this is one of those things that is different about today's NBA, is that the injury variance for these star players creates a lot more uncertainty and parity in the league.
100% true there. You mentioned how it could be a Western Conference team's year. Let's move to the East. We have the Knicks and Hawks tied 1-1. This was a 14-point comeback in game 2 for the Hawks. And CJ McCollum went off 32 points, clutch shots down the stretch, getting booed. On the Knicks side of things, couple thoughts here, Tom. Mike Brown, what are we doing? It's the playoffs. Playing a lineup with no Karl Anthony Towns and no Jalen Brunson, -7 in 12 minutes in game 2. And then Jalen Brunson on that side of things, since his first quarter, when he had 19 points on 8 of 11, Brunson in 7 quarters since then has scored 38 points on 11 of 37 from the floor. And I thought there was way too much Jalen Brunson down the stretch of game 2 in that game, especially considering an adjustment that the Hawks made that dictated the way the Knicks were playing. The Hawks put a center on Josh Hart for 7 plays in the final 5 minutes of that game. Kuminga was defending Cat, and Mike Brown didn't once try to give Cat a touch inside the 3-point line. And that's in part because of Mike Brown not instructing his players to do that. And it's also in part the players not finding Karl Anthony Towns in those situations. And it's in part Karl Anthony Towns not imposing his will inside against the smaller Jonathan Kuminga. But I just don't think you can let your $53 million highest paid player on the team be a bystander for the last 6 minutes of the game simply because he has Jonathan Kuminga defending him and you have a center defending Josh Hart. They ran everything through Brunson and Hart, and I felt like that was a massive mistake for the Knicks. It is why, in part, they blew that lead. And moving forward in the series, they need to find Cat. They can't let him just be an onlooker from the sidelines down the stretch of these games. He had a pretty good game too, but he did nothing down the stretch, Tom. And ultimately, I think for Brunson, he's got to be better too. But part of being better is finding balance and knowing to find Karl Anthony Towns.
Man, what a statement it was from Karl Anthony Towns earlier this season, preseason, when it was just like a layup of a question from a reporter being like, hey, so Mike Brown, head coach, like, you feeling good about the sets that he's putting in? And Karl Anthony Towns was like, I don't really know. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, he knew something.
And it was such a layup. It was such like, oh, we're excited. Training camp's been great. Like, excited to have Mike Brown as the coach. He's putting in some new things. From day one, Karl Anthony Towns and Mike Brown have not been on the same page. And he's made it apparent throughout this season. And you look at Karl Anthony Towns' numbers, Cat's numbers scoring-wise have plummeted this season. It's been a really ugly year for him. And then down the stretch, you're right, is that they had mismatches and opportunities to go to Cat in the post on a real size advantage and tactical advantage against Jonathan Kuminga, who other teams have isolated and targeted in the past. And Mike Brown was not able to exploit that matchup. And I don't know if it's Karl Anthony Towns is innocent in this too. Like, it almost feels like they just haven't been vibing all season long. I don't know if this is a statement by Cat, but clearly there's been a disconnect between him and the head coach ever since he took over the job. And I think this is when it gets exposed, and those miscommunications or not being on the same page, all of that surfaces in the brightest moments. And I just want to take a moment here to shout out CJ McCollum. I think the greatest inefficiency in the NBA right now is finding guys on the Wizards roster, whether it's Denny Avdia or CJ McCollum. Who's it going to be? Bilal Coulibaly, who's going to be next, pick up off the scrap heap in Washington and then turn into a star? CJ McCollum, Lehigh. Awesome job from him in game 2, and just awesome theater there at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, he was incredible. Getting booed, clutch shots all down the stretch. And that second half of the game, part of the reason why Atlanta won this. I mean, you think about what the Hawks did on the offensive end and what the Knicks didn't do, finding Karl Anthony Towns. The Hawks made 18 shots in the second half with Brunson or Cat on the floor. 14 of them, Cat or Brunson was the targeted defender. On 14 of 18 of their made shots when Brunson or Cat were on the floor, 14 of them were Cat or Brunson targets. And you juxtapose that against the other end of the floor with the Knicks failing to find Karl Anthony Towns with the smaller Jonathan Kuminga on him. It was just a stark difference in the coaching in this series and in the execution from the players on the floor. I mean, you watch these highlights if you're watching us on YouTube, they're just going at Brunson. They're finding Karl Anthony Towns in actions over and over and over in the second half of that game. And for the Hawks, they win that 107-106 coming back from down 14 in the game. I thought that adjustment when they were on the offensive end of the floor was really the key to their victory, driving that victory, in addition to what I mentioned earlier by putting a center on Josh Hart and the Knicks failing to exploit that. It's a great comeback by the Hawks. And the thing is, for the Knicks moving forward in this series, we can talk about, they should find Cat more. They should do this on offense. Brunson needs to take less shots and move the ball a little bit more. There's no fixing Brunson Cat on defense. And that's where the Knicks, you look at this team, they just might have a fundamental flaw that's going to prevent them from getting through the Eastern Conference, whether they lose in Atlanta to round 1 or whether it's next round or whether it's the Eastern Conference Finals. There's just nothing you can do about Cat Brunson. And I thought that was really apparent in game 2 in that second half.
100%. And the way that they just eviscerated Jalen Brunson. And he's not like, so the thing about Tyrese Halliburton last year and his, a lot of the things that people say about Tyrese Halliburton historically being targeted and that he doesn't have enough strength to play in postseason basketball defensively is that he's a defensive playmaker. He's long and he can get steals, jump the passing lanes, block shots. Jalen has none of those things. The only thing that Brunson has defensively is if he steps up for a charge. He's one of the top charge makers in the league, but if he's not getting the calls on push-offs or he's not able to stay in front of guys to actually take that charge, then he's useless defensively. He's too small, and he's preserving a lot of his energy for the offensive end. So good on Quinn Snyder, CJ McCollum, and the rest of the Hawks to exploit that. And there's just not a lot of evidence of guys, point guards, who are not able to make their own play make defensively and create turnovers and intercept those passing lanes. Like Tyrese Halliburton in the past, Chris Paul comes to mind, where it's like, is he too small? Is he too light in order to make an impact defensively and he can't be exploited out there? Jalen Brunson, they need the guys to shoot well, to not be exploited on the defensive end. And you saw Mikal Bridges on the last second shot there, that look at the end. I didn't feel great about that for Mikal Bridges, but it's one of those things that those other guys, the role players, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, have to be so good offensively because they have to make up for the defensive exploits of Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. So they're only going to get as far as those role players, unfortunately, hitting those shots and being shot makers, because, man, they got to work so hard defensively in order to cover up the shortcomings of Cat and Jalen Brunson.
I posted a mock draft this week on Yahoo Sports, and the audio version of this podcast, we'll hear it later, kind of going through the whole first round. And one of the things I bring up during that is in this year's draft, Tom, there's a lot of guards, smaller guards, not quite as small as Brunson, but smaller guards projected to go in like the 5 to 14 range. Guys like Kingston Flemings from Houston, Darius Acuff from Arkansas. You got at Louisville, Michael Brown, LeBaron Philon from Alabama. There's a good number of them in that range. And I think you look around the league right now, you can reach all NBA heights like Jalen Brunson has because of your offense and still have a severe flaw. You can become an elite offensive talent like Trae Young, as Hawks fans knew about, and it can turn out your team might actually be better off without you. And so I think in this year's draft class, it's just going to be very fascinating to see where some of these guys go, because one of the conversations I have with executives around the league when it comes to this draft class is like, do you want one of these 6'2" or 6'3" guards or smaller to be your centerpiece, or can they really only be a spark on your team? Is it a mistake to draft them with the hopes of them being a centerpiece of your roster when it can be so tough to build around them? Or is this, in the case of the Knicks, is this merely the fact that it's not Brunson, it's a Cat issue? Like, if Cat were a great defensive player, it'd be acceptable if Brunson were the defender that he is. It just makes your roster a bit harder to build. And ultimately, I think in this year's draft class, that is going to be one of the key things to watch for come lottery night, with how this board falls. Because I think there's a chance this year that you see some of those guards go a little bit lower than people anticipate, in part because of what we're seeing in the postseason. With just small guards, they get attacked over and over and over again. It's just the way it is at the highest levels of basketball. And even when you're at the Jalen Brunson level offensively, it can be tough. There could be people questioning if you're actually a positive on your team. And I think that's pretty telling.
Well, and you look at the other side of this, the Hawks. The Hawks are living proof of how the offensive exploits of a really small guard, their reach is an upper boundary on that. And in the playoffs, it really exposes how if you get targeted down the stretch, you can lose a game despite that Trae Young having 30 and 10. You can lose that game because the other team was scoring 35 and 15 essentially on the other end. And so what you're seeing with the Atlanta Hawks is living proof of, a lot of points and assists on one end, but we're going to get blasted defensively and just get ruined in late game situations on those targeted defensive plays. And so Jalen Brunson's a better offensive guy than Trae Young is, but defensively, they've got to figure out a way to not have him isolated and on an island here whether that's getting quick switches with Mikal Bridges or Josh Hart or OG Anunoby. They've got to figure out a better game plan in game 3, or else this is what a nightmare series for Knicks fans, is that the Atlanta Hawks, even without Trae Young, beat them in the first round.
We'll see if this does indeed become a nightmare for the Knicks. The last series that we haven't talked about yet is the Sixers tied it up 1-1 with the Boston Celtics after winning game 2, 111-97. And this was the VJ Edgecombe show. He had 30 and 10 in the game, the youngest NBA player with 30 and 10 ever since Magic Johnson in 1980, becoming the youngest player ever to do that. And he's the most recent rookie to do it since Tim Duncan had 30 and 10 back in 1998. As a rookie. And I thought the variety of the ways in which Edgecombe scored in this game just looked like superstar level stuff. Of his made shots, 4 of them were spot up threes, 2 were cuts and drives on the fast break. He had a pull up from the left elbow, a fade away from the right elbow. He had a fade away from the left baseline. He had a drive into a tough leaning contested layup. He had a pull up 3-pointer that he hit with a defender that was caught on the screen. And then late in the game, Sixers are up. They got the game kind of in hand. You know, Boston still feels like maybe we got a little bit of a shot. And VJ Edgecombe gets the ball on the right wing, and he's ISO'd against Peyton Pritchard, drains a 3-pointer off the dribble, and then he glances over and does what looks like a wink at the camera. And it is the funniest moment I think I've ever seen on the basketball court. It looked like he was looking directly into a camera that is in the opposite corner of the court, somewhere up in the stands, and gave a little wink after, after making that dagger 3-pointer. It was superstar level stuff for VJ Edgecombe. He did not look like a rookie. This was Tom, the range of buckets he scored. It's not like he just got hot from 3 off the catch. That was incredible what Edgecombe did in game 2.
I see so much Dwayne Wade in VJ Edgecombe, man. Like
so does he.
The strength, the wink, the fact that he's got this like persona to him, that he's got this grit to him, that he really, really cares both ends of the floor. I love VJ Edgecombe, and like I could say the same thing about Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg and how good that class was, but VJ Edgecombe doing this against the Boston Celtics in their building shows me that he has this kind of the it factor that you need to have to be superstar level in the NBA. VJ Edgecombe, Dwayne Wade had it, Kobe Bryant had it. You look on all these 2 guards who right out the gate had this kind of just alpha attitude about them. I just love VJ Edgecombe's game and the way that he was able to do it in so many different ways. It reminds me of, some people might say Jimmy Butler. I don't think he's big enough to be Jimmy Butler, but he certainly has this gravitas.
He'll be better than Butler, that's for sure.
He's got this gravitas to him that I think in the same way that Cooper Flagg is making a lot of Mavs fans be able to sleep at night over the Luka Doncic trade. I think when it's just so good this week.
I know.
It reminds me of that situation with Sixers fans with Embiid being out and having the appendicitis and how much of a bummer that is, and having Paul George's contract on the books. All of that is true. But as long as you got VJ Edgecombe and to a lesser extent Tyrese Maxey on your team, I think Sixers fans are going to be okay because of this dude. He is something special, man.
Look, I think for the Sixers to win this series, they still need Embiid at some point. And Embiid started his strength and conditioning this week after his surgery to remove his appendix. And we'll see. From what I understand, the conversations I've had, there's still not a clear timeline for his return. I think that would at least indicate a little bit of uncertainty for him to come back even game 4 on Sunday. I mean, I'd be real iffy there about Embiid returning at that point, but we'll see about that. But ultimately, I do think they need him, Tom. I think for Boston in this game, Edgecombe was unbelievable. Paul George had a really good game, and Maxey, like he's only 11 for 28 in the game, but I don't care. Like I just felt like he controlled the game. He needed to take 28 shots. Sometimes that's a good thing when your star does that. He made 11. He had 9 assists, only 1 turnover. I felt like Maxey played an absolute hell of a game. But ultimately, like they're gonna need Embiid at some point, and Boston isn't gonna shoot 13 of 50 from 3 every single night either. And I think Embiid, with what he showed before needing the appendix removed down the stretch of the year, he looked good. He looked like a guy who could still tap into close to his old self. And what he would provide on the offensive end of the floor against Kada, against Vooch, against Garza, if he's out there as well, it's a major difference. I would just hope that if Embiid does return, it doesn't muck up the offense. I mean, things look so fluid and so fast. There's just so much constant, quick decisions by the Sixers in that game to win against Boston. I would hope it doesn't change that, but I do think it's kind of obvious. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you feel differently, Tom. The Sixers are going to need Embiid to return at some point to win the series, right?
Yeah, I mean the shot variance of a team that shoots as many volume threes as they do, like there's going to be a couple games that you're going to be able to steal if you're the Sixers. And the reason why I didn't pick a sweep here in this was because I just feel like the Boston Celtics offense is so predicated on high volume threes that when that shot isn't falling, a team like the Sixers can win a couple of these games, but they'll probably need another guy in Joel Embiid if they want to win this series. And I'll just point out, Tyrese Maxey's inefficiency in this game is so different when you're a playmaker like he's grown to be. 9 assists to 1 turnover while having, it's 1 point per shot is not what you want to see. But it reminds me of something we didn't hit in the earlier part of the program is Jalen Green on the other side is a similar shooting profile in terms of in that game, he had the most minutes of any player on the Phoenix Suns, 21 points on 23 field goal attempts. But in this series, he has 10 turnovers to 4 assists. You cannot load up against Tyrese Maxey and expect him to take bad shots. Just not who he is. He's going to make plays for others when it makes sense for him to do that. There are other guys who can shoot inefficiently and also be a black hole offensively, and that's the case with Jalen Green, and a big reason why I just don't see it with him in the next couple of years to be on a winning team in the playoffs. But Tyrese Maxey, when he doesn't have it going, he's going to make the right play. And Maxey, I think, is I don't think it's a hot take to say he's a much better player than Jalen Green, but there's a big difference between inefficiency and being a non-productive player. And Tyrese Maxey is way more productive player when he doesn't have the shot going than guys like Jalen Green.
And he defends too. I mean, Maxey's on the smaller side, but he flies around on defense. He's become a productive defensive player. And I mean, I think your note about Jalen Green, when you put that against, side by side with Tyrese Maxey is smart. It's also smart when you put it against Derek White. Derek White is such a sensational defender. There's always a positive impact he makes. That said, one of the trends to watch with the Celtics shooting variance is Derek White, because in this series, he was 2 for 10 in game 2. He's now 4 of 17 through these first 2 games against the Sixers, 23.5% from 3. That's after shooting 32.7% from 3 on the season. And Derek White was a 40% guy the last couple of years for Boston. That's a concern for the Celtics with how much Derek White plays, how much he's on the floor. Can he find himself as a shooter? And if he doesn't, suddenly do teams start just sagging off him and saying, hey, go ahead, take the shot. We don't trust you. Derek White has talked openly in the past about how so much of shooting for him is mental. And, my buddy Eric Weiss, who's, a listener of the show, and he commented to me on X, he said he thinks Derek White, with all the on-ball responsibilities, something just got shook up in his mind. Like just he's just not able to just laser in and focus shooting off the catch in the way he did in recent years. And I know that's just, like armchair psychologist level stuff, but I do think there's something to that, Tom, considering White has talked so much about his process with the mental side of shooting. I don't think this is mechanical with him, and we'll see what happens moving forward in the postseason. But for Boston, if he can refine his shot, that just dramatically increases their chances of being the team that hoists the Larry O'Brien trophy at the end. And if he doesn't, I do think that plays more into the shooting variance aspect with the Celtics. He took 10 shots in game 2. He's part of the reason why they had a poor shooting night. And so for the Celtics, they need Derek White to turn it around at some point.
Yeah. Yep. And it's becoming like a worry that he's turning into Draymond Green in the sense that he's not a good 3-point shooter and guys are going to hold off of him and let him shoot those open threes. But he's so good defensively and he's a playmaker that you got to have him on the floor. But and Boston fans aren't going to like that comp. But when you're talking about a guy who's shooting as poorly as he did from downtown in the regular season and here in the postseason, he's not getting to the free throw line. It's bizarre because he's as good of a free throw shooter as you'll find in the league, or just about 90%. And we talked about it with Scoot Henderson. Usually those guys are 40% 3-point shooters. And historically, you're not leaving Derek White open by choice. But now you're creeping into that zone, like you said, that if you're going to have to take a shade off of a guy on the 3-point line and be able to help off of him, it's not going to be Jason Tatum. It's not going to be Jaylen Brown. It's not going to be Peyton Pritchard. But at a certain point, teams are going to start defending him like Draymond Green and just inviting him to shoot. We're not there yet, I don't think. But you're right to point out that the longer that we see this drought from Derek White, it's going to be something on the scouting report that we just don't think that he's worth those rotations, those hard closeouts anymore, and we want to sag off of him.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. People can check out your writing at Yahoo Sports and at Tom the Finder and The Big Number, your podcast every Wednesday covering the NBA playoffs. Tom, thanks for joining me today, man. Have a good weekend.
You got it, Kev.
Thank you, everybody, for watching us live on YouTube. Up next on the audio version of the podcast, I got a full mock draft going through the entire first round.